Hello, Mauricio. So today I will be showing you, first of all, this make a reservation stored procedure. So here, this first section here, inputs to pass a value. So I'll choose the guest ID, check-in date, checkout time, number guests, and room ID as the values that will be entered. And here, this calculates the number of days between the checkout date and checkout time. It shows the difference. And then here we have if exists, select from. So this is validating the guest ID. So if it exists inside the guest table and matches, then it'll print guest ID is valid. Otherwise, program stopped. And then next here we have this checks if the room ID, if the room type exists. And looks like I have made a mistake because here is room ID rather than room type ID. But basically this is going to check if the room is valid. And then lastly, this is what actually creates the new reservation. So it takes all the input values that we give it and then inserts them in a new row in the reservations table. All right, so here I'm going to add a guest reservation. So here's the guests. I'm going to do guest 1003. And here are the reservations. So here I'm going to execute the stored procedure I just made right here. So yeah, execute. And then check room type list. So we're going to execute it. As you can see, it was added here. Here's the guest, the room, and no, here it is. Here's the new guest at the bottom here. And here you can see the days working and calculating 3 days. And next I will work on the extra services. All right, so this part of the procedure, the check-in procedure, it validates whether a guest actually has a reservation the day that they're trying to check in. And so you store the reservation ID in a variable using the select statement. And if it's not found and it says null, then the if statement blocks the procedure and says no reservation valid for guests. All right, Mauricio, here we go. This is the parameters that we are going to insert data into the table, the top here. And so this procedure here is going to take the guest ID and the check-in date and it's gonna see if it exists. If it doesn't, it's gonna say no reservation for guests. But if it does, then it will look up the room type and check if that kind of room is available. So here we go, it'll show that. And so if none are free, then it'll pick the lowest number room. Right here, as you can see, it'll select the minimum room ID number from rooms. And it's going to show where they are available. So if there are rooms, then it'll pick the lowest number room, and it'll calculate how many nights they're going to stay here, the date difference right here. And it'll update their reservation in the end to the actual details, and it'll mark the room unavailable now that they have reserved it, and it'll print the confirmation message. So now my check-in process can verify, it can check availability, it can assign a room, update the room status. So here's my reservations table as of now, and I'm gonna run the stored procedure we just made. So here we checked the guests into room 3, and I'm gonna select the reservations table again. And here you see room 3. This reservation ID, this new room, and here's the days, 6 days. Here's the room type ID on the right side. All right, hello Mauricio. I'm gonna tell you about the add services to reservations stored procedure. This one took me a long time. There was a lot of things I'd change in the table to make all of these parameters work out. But here we can see we find the reservation ID, and it'll save the results in the SP, but it is saying it is finding which reservation is tied to the guest, and if it can't find one, then it won't work. And here's where it validates whether the reservation is open. So this is checking if there's an open reservation with that reservation ID, and if none exists, it'll print the error. Okay, moving on. Here we are validating the service. So this step makes sure that the service ID is valid. And if it adds one that doesn't, if the guest adds one that doesn't exist, it'll give this error. Okay. Next up, we have getting the service details. So that is right here, this section. So here it stores the name and the price. So then we can insert that data here. We have this checks if the service isn't on the reservation already and prevents duplicates. So if it wasn't already added, then it'll print this and it'll add that new record. Okay. Here we have a long one. So this section here checks if the service already exists and if we need to update it. So if it already exists, if the service already exists for that reservation, then it will increase the units of service by the amount of units, and it'll update the data and print the confirmation message. And that is the end times 6. Okay, so here you can see the reservations table for guest 3002. It's completely empty. And I just executed this. I added these into the reservations table. So now when I check guest 3002, you can see that this has all been filled out. I tried to add this service to the reservation, but I'm having some trouble, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it maybe is the units of service being empty, or... All right, I'm gonna try to finish strong here. This has been a long one. So here we are. So in the first section, to get the latest reservation ID, we use the function max on the reservation ID to get the most active ID number, with the input guest ID to ensure that we have the latest reservation. Next, we get the room's price. So with the subquery, we retrieved the room type ID and the base rate from the room table to calculate that price. Okay. And where are we? Okay. Next is get room ID. So we select the room ID from the reservations table using the reservation ID, and then that value will be used to update the room availability. And then we get the check-in date. So the subquery retrieves the check-in date for the reservation, and next we calculate the number of days. So this is like the other ones, the difference between the days. And then next up, we tallied the extra services. So with the sum function, we multiplied the price and the units of service to get the cost of the extra services, and then we updated the reservation fees. So the update statement on the reservations table is used to update these values. And then calculating the subtotal before tax is right here. Oops. And so for that, we updated it derives the subtotal times the tax right here. So it first gets the subtotal, and then it adds the tax. And so that's just like a regular transaction where it adds the tax afterwards. And then the room gets marked to available, so it updates the available field to true in the rooms table. And then lastly, down here, an update on the extra services table to set the paid column, update the paid column. And yeah, that is the end. And next I will show you how it works, hopefully. All right, so here is before the checkout procedure. Here's me executing the stored procedure for this guest. And then here are the results. Get a checkout date and the fee. And it is available once again. So yeah, thank you.